did you hit record now?
It's recording as of right now. So
as of right now, this whole intro of how you forgot to hit record on the intro is now a new intro because you forgot to hit record. So are we officially we're officially
going? Recording. We're good now.
We're good.
We're good now.
Are you sure? It is the button that has the little the red circle on it. Is it no indented as if you have pressed it for start recording?
There's no red circle.
That's not a good sign. So now that we're actually recording, Default Dan, and I've used up my voluntary swear word on your chat, I will publicly apologize to all of our audio listeners who had to deal with that intro, and now also welcome everybody on in by saying welcome officially to the Snapback podcast, the actual recording that Default Dan is now recording for us. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and I am dealing with Default Dan over here on my side as we figure out what the chaos is about to happen in Marvel Snap. So first off, Default Dan, why don't you let our audio listeners know how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Like I said, it's been crazy. We were talking earlier today, work, everything, just crazy. We had Marvel Scrap right before this. So, having some fun, getting through it. We definitely have so much going on, not just in life and stuff, but the game too. We got a lot of new cards coming. We got a lot of stuff coming today with a patch tomorrow. Just all kinds of craziness.
Yeah, by the time our listeners and watchers hear this and see this, they're going to realize, wow, there's a patch and there's a Conquest Mode and there's a Silk and there's a Ghost Spider is old news. And what's that thing ladder? I don't remember what that is. We're dealing with the new shiny toy. Like there is a lot that's going to be happening in Marvel Snap. And that's just in the game. That's not even getting into all of the tournaments that have happened and have not happened. And this is my casual check-in. You're sure you're recording now, sir?
Yes, it's recording.
Okay, beautiful. Awesome. We'll continue like nothing happened. So I think as, Alex Kocha has said before, and in every podcast I think to date, it's a great time to be a Marvel Snap player because there's a lot of really cool things happening simultaneously. And I know for our end, not just, from the community side with Wednesday Night Snaps still up and running, and we've got the June Open, which we can now finally talk about publicly, which is next Saturday from the time of this broadcast. There's so much going on at once. And we're just here to try to articulate it as clearly as possible by looking at the biggest pieces that are going to affect you, whether that's through this podcast or through our content that we put on Snap.fan. We're here for you first and foremost. So I just want to dive right into it and start talking about Ghost Spider because, dude, I have had so much fun. I have had absolutely so much fun working with Ghost Spider. I feel like Ghost Spider has changed how people look at moving tech cards. And I think that she is just something that this game needed as a tech position because I'm using her in tech, to deal around, move around a Shuri style play, which has been incredibly successful. And not just to me, but to others. And I'm very happy about that. And then when I see her in a move archetype, as of course, obviously expected, she would be incredibly successful there as well. Tell me about your experience so far with Ghost Spider, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's one of those cards, like you mentioned, there's some good stuff when it comes to putting her in there, and it's not just locked to a movement deck. In the past, a lot of these cards that have come in, you've looked at them, like I'll take an example of Nimrod, or you look at like Hit Monkey, and you have to kind of build the decks very specifically in order to make a move. And I feel like over last month and this month, they've kind of opened the door to that. They've made cards that aren't very specific to decks. And I feel like, yes, Ghost Spider is great in the movement decks. Like we talked about Human Torch on 1, Ghost Spider on 2. But being able to move around cards or being able just to take like Ghost Spider plus Vulture into a deck, right? And not have to build 10 other movement cards and still make something viable. I think it's been a lot of fun with her, and being able to see just some really, cool plays around her.
Yeah, I mean, I still try to wrap my head around some of the chaos plays that have been happening using Invisible Woman that we've seen over the past weekend, which are
Mm-hmm.
really, really cheeky. And I mean, she just opens up a different avenue for tech, for
Yeah.
delay. You know, the relocation and the delay of effect
Mm-hmm.
all built into the same card, and depending on how you use it, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
that's what these cards need to be. They need to be fun. They need to
Mm-hmm.
be cards that are making you reevaluate what you do in the game. And I think that she absolutely does, because she's putting players on edge differently. Now, granted, it's because, she's the new season pass and we're in the first week of the month. So
Yeah.
lots of people are trying to make their value of spending for the season pass
Mm-hmm.
have more than its value, because they just overuse her in the first week.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing, but it doesn't, shake off the fact that when you go into the ladder, you have over a 30% chance to run into a ghost spider at any given point right now, based on
Mm-hmm.
just our current numbers from Snap.fan.
Yeah.
And I love that, because she's a good card and she makes you think differently, kind of like how Jeff the Baby Land Shark does.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you
Absolutely.
Professor X'd doesn't mean the threat is gone.
Yeah.
That's what Ghost Spider's now doing too.
Well, and I've had some fun games where you're able to do some stuff that previously you couldn't. So, for instance, think of things like Shuri's Lab. Being able to drop a big drop into Shuri's Lab and then instantly next turn pull that card out, or maybe even the same thing, like a 4 drop and her on turn, 6 or something like that. But being able to kind of move these cards where you normally wouldn't have been able to has been kind of just interesting, and being able to kind of take advantage of some of these things. We talked about it the other day, like on the last podcast, where you're like, what would you use with her? And I still think there's some fun, like Ghost Spider plus Doc Ock that we talked about, like filling up one of their lanes and then moving them over. As well as another card that I honestly, personally don't like this card, which is Negasonic. But I've seen some interesting Negasonic plays where you play Negasonic down into a lane, which means they're not going to play there because, they're having to play 2 cards. And then like turn 6 or turn 5, you can pull Negasonic to another lane knowing they're going to play there. And if you have priority, you pulled it, it came over, they played a card, you blew up their card. So I think there's some like trickery, again, outside of solid movement decks, where Ghost Spider can do some cool stuff. And we'll see some similar stuff, right, with Spider-Man 2099 as he releases later this month. But I still think there's some cool stuff you can already do that people just may not have thought about just yet.
Yeah, I very much so forecast in 2 weeks' time that we create a Stomping Spiders deck with
Yeah.
that exact destroy move hybrid in mind. And it's going to be, for lack of a better term, a boatload of fun.
Yeah.
So Ghost Spider, I think she's a worthwhile card. Obviously, season pass is already a great value. I think that this was a win month for a season pass. We've had some really good, and this is on that end for me. And then we've had some Nimrod Modoc,
Yeah.
just kind of, very limited, very limited type season passes. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan, and I would still continue to recommend her. Are you recommending Silk though to anybody? And if so, why?
So when we look at Silk, right? Like I like the card for what it is. Do I think it's a great card? I'm not sold yet. So the thing is with Silk, she's a 2/5. So if you guys don't know, especially on the podcast, if you're listening in, Silk is a 2/5, and if any card is played here, this moves to another location. So that means if the opponent plays or you play, she's going to move around. So Titania does something similar. You play here, she jumps to the other side. Silk's not going to jump to the other side. She's just going to move to your locations. So I think that, and again, if you guys are interested in this, there is an article up on Snap.fan. So definitely check that out. There's a character spotlight article with all kind of information. Guest breaks a lot of that down. Near the bottom, I've got a deck that we'll talk about a little bit later. But It's one of those things where you kind of have to do one of two things. You either have to embrace the move or you have to ignore the move. So just like you do with Titania, playing 0 into Titania to try to get rid of her effect, being a 2/5, 0 being a 1/3, I mean, 3 energy, 8 power is pretty good, right? So I think it's one of those things that you could do the same thing here if you just don't want to mess with it too much. And I think she can find some movement in those. But I mean, I don't know. I think she'll be good. I think she'll be fun. She'll be unpredictable. She'll be able to get to locations that people can't get to, like Sanctum, a stormed location, flooded location. But I do worry a little bit about, that turn 4 play where your opponent she moves to a location, your opponent plays there. Again, we're not fully sure how the interaction is going to work with, at what point does she stop moving? But I am worried that she can fill up locations without you like really wanting them to be full. And if they get filled up and your opponent's already winning, they're not playing into it. So yeah, that's my only kind of like worry about her, is she goes somewhere you don't want her to go. But I definitely think that there's going to be some fun stuff you can do with leveraging cards like Craven and others to take advantage of that movement when it happens.
Yeah, she's going to be, in my opinion, she's going to be an incredibly valuable card. I think that she's going to be not necessarily looked at as much from the 0 play. I think that works for very specific decks because, as you said, going from her 0 into her is the same thing as 0 into Titania.
Yeah.
Which I'm very proud that you pronounced it right this time. But
I like to call her Tatiana over here.
Yeah.
In the Dan Cave.
Yeah, you can call her Tatiana, but that's not her damn name. No one knows who Tatiana is. Sounds like someone's working on. Never mind. We're going to leave that for another podcast. But Titania is a 2 in total.
Yeah.
So you're spending only 2 to get that effect to happen. Now, I think with Silk, that's a great turn 1 and turn 2 combo to go 0 into Silk. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as much as part of a turn 6 package or turn 4 into 5 package necessarily. So I'm a little less on that boat about it, but I do support it still nevertheless. I think that it would feed into certain shells very, very well. The biggest play that I see with her is actually being in very tall stacking decks. I see her being very good in Lockjaw decks. I see her being very good with any deck that rocks out the She-Hulk Infinite combination. I see a bunch of it. There's a lot of possibilities because she has such an incredibly high stat line. And eventually, I think that she's going to become an annoying card to deal with because as always, if is good, if it is one of those static effects that continues to go on throughout the duration of the turn. So say she's played on the left-hand side and then you play 1 on left and 1 on right. If you play on left, she moves in the mid-turn and then she moves to the right and now you played on the right and then she moves again. If she moves multiple times within one turn, this could make it a really, really fun card to deal with. And the cheeky play that I want to look at is Disruption. I want to look at potentially even vipering her and using that as a kind of like almost like vipering Ebony Maw, the same idea. Like you send her over to lock a lane down or force them to realize that they're going to end up needing to stuff a lane. Otherwise she's going to get stuck. And then exactly what that power is early on. She's gonna bring a different spin on Disruption if we can get that to be a regular piece with her.
And I think if you're going to do that,
there's easy stuff too. Sorry.
If you're going to do that with Viper, though, I think a good play would be like Bast on 1, make her a little bit smaller, and then throw her over because that also makes your Viper bigger. But yeah, I mean, I think she's definitely going to be one of those cards that's going to make you have to math a lot. Like the move decks already make you math when you're figuring out like, okay, can I move this with my cloak and then be able to pull something back? So I haven't filled that location. Am I going to Heimdall at the end to do this kind of weird stuff? Like I definitely think that deck is a very good deck when you know how to play it because of all those lines.
Right.
And I think this adds another line to that. So I definitely think there's gonna be a lot of games where she just steals you wins because she gets into those locations. Like we're seeing more and more of these like lockdown locations. And so I think by her being able to kind of sneak into those, we're gonna, 5 is big. There's a lot of games where you win off a Doombot going over there, right? And now you're starting to add a world where, hey, I have a Doombot. She's right here and she's a 2-drop. So yeah, I think that it's going to happen. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. The other thing that kind of stands out to me is we're getting a lot of good 2s. So we have a good Ghost Spider was a 2, Silk is a 2, Jeff the Baby Land Shark's a 2. There's a lot of 2s happening, and it's like they're there so that Killmonger can't kill them. And I'm curious, at what point do we get some 5-drop that kills all 2-drops? Right? Like, I don't know if that's a real card that they should print, but like we're getting a lot of these 2-drops that like are there to make sure that they don't get Killmongered, but they're really good cards. And there's not really, like in this case, there's not an answer to her. It's a text-based effect, and a lot of these cards that are coming in, like Jeff, it's a text-based effect. Like there isn't a lot of answers to them. So I'm curious what we're going to start to see at some point. Like what's going to be the answer to some of these cards?
I like that idea of like a 5-cost card that is like mega Killmonger and just takes out all 2 costs. I think that could be a cool effect, and I wouldn't mind seeing it. And I'd love the commentary, from our listeners, whether it's on YouTube in the comments or over on ratethispodcast.com, letting us know what you think, because I think she's a card that's going to be fun to tech with. Especially after the first hour when we see how the effect really truly works, and then we go, oh, okay, here we go, let's do this, let's move this, because I know the number one thing I want to see is if there is any predictability behind the effect of being able to say, okay, outside of obviously a location being full, can we say if you play every time she's in the middle, she prioritizes left over right? Or is it every time that if you go ahead and Ghost Spider her, that she's going to move to the 3rd location instead of where she just came from? Like there's a couple of different things I want to test out with her, because if we can find any consistency to be able to move her left, right, into the middle, that's going to make her probably one of the strongest cards in the game, because of how it can move left and right without needing to have a scheduled time move mechanic, very similar to what Vision's strength is, even though Vision is just not overall a strong card. Having that be a reactive effect is going to be really cool. So I like Silk. I'm getting Silk, when she drops in, X amount of minutes away from this record time. I'll be getting Silk, and I'll be playing her Wednesday on stream, because tomorrow is going to be a very busy day for Snap.fan. Very, very.
No, it's definitely one of those things where there's a lot she can do. I think she's a good card overall. Like you mentioned, I think her stat line helps her. I think if she was a 2-3 or 2-4, I wouldn't be as excited. 2-5's pretty good.
100%.
So I'm curious what people are going to come up with. Like I said, she is the Series 5 card, just to put that out there as well. The other 2 cards this month are Series 4 cards. So if you're thinking about your tokens, how you're going to do your cards and get those, that's something to think about, which kind of takes us into our next topic here. We've got card acquisition, and this has been a hot topic, right? Overall, hot topic in the game. We've got some changes coming soon, but we don't know what they are. We haven't been told anything. Nothing's out there. All we know is they're slowly working on card acquisition. We've seen some of those changes with the way they've done the token shop, your free Series 3 card. They talked about this past month, or this past big change, right, with certain cards staying in Series 4. We don't know if that means they'll always be Series 4. We don't know if eventually they'll drop and things like that. We've got the big bads who never drop. I mean, at least that's what they've told us when they released, right? The big bads will always stay in Series 5. And I think that this has become kind of a hot topic, because as it's related to new players, as it's related to, people trying to get some of these cards, it hasn't been the friendliest or what people have wanted to hear, especially after this last set of notes we had the other week.
Oh, card acquisition. How I loathe the job of the devs on this one, because let's be honest, no matter what, they're wrong. And that's
Yeah.
not due to any other reason outside of people just like to pitchfork whenever they can. And we're all a part of it in some way, whether it's about a game mode, whether it's about a specific card, whether it's about card acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone's going to be happy, with whatever is going on with someday getting changes to other cards. Like, look, there's no right answer to card acquisition, and we're never going to be content with whatever they say. But there are certain buzz points that we can focus on. Okay. First off, I think it's a safe thing to say that one free card a month versus the guaranteed you can choose the card that you want to get from your series 3, they're very different, and the economy of the game is based on using your resources, not just getting your resources.
Mm-hmm.
And they need people to use their resources. Case in point, people still were holding on to their caches for a long time, waiting for something big to happen for the different not avatars, excuse me, the different variant rush that might come to the game. And then we had the steampunk variant rush, and everyone dumped all of their caches then at that point. But since then, they have said that, one, we're not getting any more of them because people held onto their caches. But just as coincidentally, people are still holding onto their caches because the system still says, well, you're going to have to get a series 4 card that drops from 5 anyway, and you don't want to spend 3,000 tokens on it. So guess what? We're still holding on to our caches. Waiting for the series drops to happen, which is another topic. And it's not helping the economy because everybody's sitting on, a safety deposit box full of gold and credits and, things that can boost up your collection, boost up your cards. And it gives an inaccurate evaluation of what the economy of the game actually is when it comes to activity. And that's really hard from a developer standpoint too.
Yeah, I think and to your point, right, there's like two aspects of it. So I'll give myself as an example. I've only got 9 or 10 caches waiting at the moment, but that's because I just cracked a bunch. The last time we had a series drop, right? We had Dazzler and Shanna, and a few of those dropped down, so I went and got them. But since then, I mean, I really haven't used my credits, really haven't used my caches or anything like that, outside of the fact of getting to the point I know I'm in my next block of 40, waiting on Stegra, waiting on Snow Guard to drop, now that we know that they're dropping pretty soon. So I agree with you on that. I think that what you end up happening is, I don't want to go open up a cache right now and hit a series 5 card that's literally about to be a series 4, because those are the only 2 cards I don't have. I'll wait till some of these new cards drop in to maybe hit them as a series 5 card. But yeah, it's a weird spot, because prior to that, when I had Dazzler and Shayna and them be my series 5 only cards I didn't have, I didn't want to open anything because I didn't want them. It's a weird spot, but it's like every card I have, I had tokens to get. And I'll preface this with anybody hanging out with us live in chat or watching this after the fact. I know I'm in the minority. This isn't everybody, right? Like, but I'm definitely, starting from day one of beta, and I've just always had the cards. So it's definitely one of those things where the economy is not perfect in any way. I'm never going to get to a point that I'm getting a free series 3 card. Unless I literally don't open anything for 2 or 3 months. Like, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get them in series 4 when they drop down from 5, if I don't want them. Compared to last month and this month, all the cards look good enough. I'm going to spend tokens on them. But yeah, it's a weird spot, and it's because of this 1 card a week model that is unique to Marvel Snap.
And I'm still for it. And let me make that clear on my own standing on this too, is that I'm still for the one card a week model versus we get no new content. And then they, as they do in many other games, they have an expansion and then they drop 15, 20, 30 cards, whatever it is, all at one time.
200.
And then everybody scrambles for, say again?
200 at a time, but yes.
Yeah,
continue.
Exactly. And everybody scrambles to figure out whatever the new meta is going to be. And then it's figured out in a month. And then you've got 2 months of nothing. I don't mind at all the whole trickle effect that we get from Marvel Snap. I do think that there are ways that they could make the trickle effect better. And they're definitely stepping in the right direction by offering some of these cards at Series 4 on their drop and launch. I afterwards came to realize it all started to make sense for me as to why Silk then also was our Series 5 and being dropped at the exact same time as a patch, because then you can't open the new card if you are someone who sits on a group of 40 waiting for the next Series 4 to happen that you've unlock. I'm like, okay, like some of the economy things start to make a little bit more sense, but I agree with you that there are just some cards that are clearly not meant to be premier cards in the game. They are support secondary cards in the game. You know, Snow Guard is the number one that people are going to reference as exactly that. I still think there's probably some opportunity with her somewhere, but God knows where that's going to be, especially in Conquest. Forget it. No. I worry when it comes to the card acquisition because I don't know what the solve is, and not because I need to know, but in the sense of what is it that would make people want to expend their resources regularly, you know, and not just gold. You know, what makes them want to open their caches? Is it increasing percentages on things like variants and reducing certain other ones? Is it, you know, knowing that there's a limited, you know, ultimate that you can now unlock, just like you can get a Series 5 card out of a collection track? Is it, what else can they do to incentivize people to want to continue up the collection track, no matter how complete or incomplete you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because there's kind of two aspects that they're having to balance, and the devs definitely have their work cut out for them when it comes to this, because to your point, there has to be incentives to go up the track, and the problem right now is there's a lot of negatives incentive when it comes to either of the stuff, whether it's season pass caches or it's the collector's level, because one, you either end up like with 50 credits and you're like, well, that was lame, doesn't feel good, right? Or you hit a variant that you don't care about. You finally hit a variant, you're like, yes, variant. Oh, it's Pixel Modoc, and that's not what I wanted, right? Like it's those kind of things
so
where it's
ugly
like,
that it's great. Yeah.
but it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like, and that's where I sit with my caches of like, all right, I have no incentive to open these until a series drop happens. When a series drop happens, I'll do it, and then once I get my 2 cards, I'll get to the end of my 40 block knowing that when the next whatever happens, I can hit it in the 40 block, right? Like, so there's definitely those kind of aspects of it that I don't know how they solve that. As far as the gold spend and things like that, where you may want gold, Conquest could be the answer. We'll talk about that in just a little bit, but Conquest could be some of the answer of the gold spend, because I know there's a lot of people out there, they don't care about variants, right? We've got the variant shop in here, right? And you can spend your gold to grab whatever kind of card you're looking at, but for the most part, either people have 1 or 2 specific variants they like that they use gold on, or they just don't care about variants. There's nothing for them to using in, so they're just like gathering up gold for nothing. So
I also need to call it out here for our audio listeners that I am still judging Default Dan at the moment. For those who are watching on the video side, I don't care if it's Venom.
Okay.
You spent money on a pixel.
I did, but
there is one pixel in the game that is worth gold at the moment, and it is not Venom.
Okay, this is for our listeners. This is for our listeners and our current viewers only. I picked up that variant, that Venom pixel variant, because I have a long game for the World Snap Federation and why I need certain pixels for when I get a certain matchup that I want to use it for. So
gotcha.
There's a madness to this method, but I agree with you. I normally only buy Dan hips because Dans are the Dans. But yes.
All the Dans. If you spend money on a pixel, it should only be Orca. Yeah. And that is it. That is the only one worthwhile because he roars and he is Orca. But outside of that, economy wise and incentivizing the players to invest their resources into the game, whether it's opening caches, whether it's spending the gold that they've collected, using the credits to upgrade cards. I know you kind of leaned on the idea that people don't care about whether it's avatars or specific variants that they just don't use or whatever. Yeah. So maybe, tinfoil hat the idea of having some kind of exchange system, being able to cash in avatars that you don't want for blank currency that you use in a new variant shop or cosmetics shop. Hey, I have these 62 billion, different avatars that I'm never going to want or use. Let me cash them in for a certain currency so I can get the one that I want for X amount. And that's the one I'm going to bring into Conquest to get the Infinity Border because I've been looking for it and I never see it and it never pops up. Or I don't you're only ever playing, and I'm sorry to Marvel Snap if they disagree with this, and I'd love to see them show us numbers otherwise, but everybody has, outside of making meme decks of all pixels, for example, or all babies, for example, which work better when you're building decks on Snap.fan and that's it.
Yeah.
But in actual competition, you have one variant you like, and you have one variant you split until you have another one variant that you choose to make that be the one that you split instead. You're typically rocking one version of a card in almost every deck because it's your favorite one.
Yeah.
I would love a way for me to say, okay, well, let's see. I have base level. You've got Stegron on the screen, right? I have base level Stegron. And by some weird grace, I end up getting the Dan Hip Stegron. Okay. Awesome. I've already put some credits into Stegron and I start upgrading the Dan Hip Stegron. Cool. Next week, then, this is not true. I'm just making up something for argument's sake. Next week, let's see Venomized Stegron, which would be pretty badass, comes to the game, right? And Venomized Stegron comes on, and now that's my favorite. But I've already split the pixel because I wanted a variant. If I could take that split pixel and say, I've already invested 1,500 credits worth of upgrades to make it an Infinity Border pixel.
Yeah.
If I could cash it in for 700 credits or for 400 credits or for 200 credits or X amount of currency that I could use to buy the variant I want of Stegron that's in this specialty cosmetics shop, to me, that re-influx of resources to really actually let me do one of the number one things Marvel Snap is most proud of, which is to build a unique collection without the restriction of time being my biggest restrictor and luck being my biggest restrictor. That giving us that opportunity would be huge. And I think is probably one of the easiest ways I would look at, okay, if that happened, I'd open up all 80 of my caches I'm sitting on right now because I'd want all of the bad variants. I'd want all of the credits, all of the collector's tokens, get everything, and let's really build a collection that I'm wanting.
Yeah, I think another thing they could look at doing as an option is being able to somehow favorite variant styles. So I get what you're saying, per card would be insane. It would be awesome. I just don't see that being a thing because of what it would take on the back end to make that happen. But I do think it'd be interesting to see if they gave us a spot where you could say and realistically, they could probably do this on the back end without us doing anything. Look at your purchase history, look at the styles, take the top 4, of those styles and give them a weight to them. Give them a 40% chance of showing up in a cache, or a 30% chance of showing up in a cache or in your store, right? And that alone would be huge. But if they wanted to give us something front end to say, all right, pick 3 variants you like, and we're going to give them a 25% more chance to come up. And then that way, if you selected 3 of them, you know, you're bound to see one of them a day in the shop.
Yeah.
And then over in your caches, you should hit them. But I definitely think that that's something that they have to do, because, for instance, like I mentioned, I only really buy Dan Hips, and I see one every 2 weeks. And I know I'm missing a bunch. Like, I have a bunch, but I'm also still missing like 30 plus. So for them not to show up every other day or something like that, to me, is kind of insane. But then again, there are like tons of variants and you only see 6 a day. So, I mean, it makes sense in a way, but it's definitely one of those that they need to work on a little bit.
Feed the fire, but just be careful, because if you already have a fire of pixels,
it's true,
you're going to get a lot more pixel recommendations.
Well, that's where they have to look at your purchase history. They can't just look at your collection, because everybody's going to have more pixels than anything.
Yeah.
So
imagine like, okay, we're going to look at just the collection, and then it's just a solid store of pixels, and then like one baby.
Because even if you're like all over the place with what you purchase, like Flaviano or Jim Lee or any of those, right? Like, you're still going to have a weighted value to maybe 4 or 5 of them. And it isn't just looking at the top one, right? It's looking at the top 5 or whatever. And so I think by even doing that, and it just being a percentage, you're still going to get a variety, but you're always going to at least have one in the shop that you would buy. And if they want us to spend gold, which equates to spending money in the game at some level, whether that's a lot of time in the game or bundles or whatever, I mean, that's how you do it. You put a Dan Hip in there, you put 2 Dan Hips in there every day, I'm getting them. I'm figuring out how to get the gold from something, and I'm getting them. So, you know,
and I also know that a part of it is the that thirst also does keep you there and always does keep you looking. So there's that balance that they got to figure out too, of how much is too much exposure before you just are tapped out.
Yeah.
You know, they want you thirsty to spend in drip over months rather than all at once and then you're done. Yeah. So it's a tough balance, and I would hate to be a dev for that reason.
Yeah. And I also think if it's something where they're coming up often, then the FOMO may be a little less, because I may skip it this week, but knowing that within the next 4 or 5 weeks, I may see it. I may feel like I'll see it. Right now, the FOMO is real. If it pops up, like, you have to buy it, because you ain't going to see it again. Compared to when we started in beta, I felt like I saw the same variants all the time. Now there's so many I never see. So definitely different. But kind of going
acquisitions in. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're good.
I was gonna say, kind of looking at the whole ladder system, essentially, of like, we go up the collection track and we're trying to figure out, do we open our caches, do we not? But that's, it's all a product of having fun with what we already have, which is just ladder. And we're trying to showcase ladder. And sure, there's battle mode, and we've made community tournaments, become incredibly popular, so much so that it's made it as high as going into the Twitch Rivals, broadcast series, which is amazing. Yeah. But, with Conquest coming out this week, whether you have a unique collection or not, it does bring up some interesting questions. It brings up the question of, what we've been doing for the most part. Let's be honest, for the most part, what we've been doing for a large majority of the community is ladder mode. And we're in ladder brain, and this is the game mode that we're focusing on, and this is what we're getting used to, and this is what we know, and we make all of our video content as creators about, as we're thinking mostly about ladder mode because people want to get to infinite, etc. Right? But now there's Conquest. So how does ladder brain affect new Conquest, and how does new shiny Conquest end up affecting the ladder?
Yeah, and kind of as we're looking at Conquest coming in, I think what's interesting this month with ladder is the big mess up we had with the bug, right? And a lot of people just being in infinite when we started. And when it comes to ladder, I really like, we'll never see these numbers, but I really want to know the numbers. I feel like I've seen so many people this month. It's been a week and I've seen so many people say, I just hit infinite in 3 days and I've never hit infinite before. And I'm curious, like, what is happening to this season? Yes, there was people that were already in infinite, but even out of like all the creators that I've seen, that's not that many. I think I've only seen like maybe 8 people that I can think of off the top of my head that like jumped into infinite from the beginning.
Well, that's the thing though, is, you got to exclude creators, right? Because creators, you spend ridiculous amounts of time playing the game for a number of different reasons. But if you look at the giant overall scope of the community, the game tries to aim for somewhere around the 5, at most 10% spectrum of how many people out of the entire scope of the game move to infinite. They're all there and they're all staying there, which means the same pool that got dropped into a bell curve. Remember, they did a renormalization. That same pool that was up to 99 has been renormalized in 99. So that 70 to 99 that people are competing with, that 73 or whatever it is to 99 that people are competing upwards towards, it's a much smaller pool. So if there was a time to make it to infinite at all, it was within this first past week this month. Because as that top end gets chopped off, it's a very large, wide group of people that are trying to hit through a very tiny funnel now for the next 2-3 weeks, whatever it is. So that's a huge aspect to it, is that the infinite people who normally take 2 weeks of battling and do decent battling are no longer battling the okay-ish battlers that are trying to get to infinite that might get there by the end of the month. Those people that are normally there in 2 weeks, they're already there because they were there last season. So now those people that took a month now, in a way, kind of had like 2 months to total think about it. So they had this nice little start this season.
Yeah, and I think if you were 140, you ended up being infinite, or like 130 something. There was a weird number, and you instantly were infinite when you started. So there was a handful of those, but I know I did mine pretty easily. I think I averaged. I don't know if I sent you or Lethal's, whatever it was, but it was like 12 minutes a day in 1 week and made it to infinite. And I made it off a Hella deck.
Nice.
Like, not even like any crazy, whatever, super good deck, because Hella's not super good, but it was just one of those of like, let me try something different. And again, a lot of high Evo control decks out there, a lot of high Evo in general. Galactus, like a lot of big decks, taking it in infinite. But I am really curious if there was a way to see that data to say, all right, 4 months ago, what was your average 1 or 2% that made the infinite compared to last month? I felt like there was a ton of people hitting infinite. And this month, after a week, there's a ton of people in infinite. So I'm just curious, what does ladder look like next month when the reset really happens? And I'm also curious, kind of making that transition to Conquest, is what it like right now. We talked about it, right? We both wanted to try to hit infinite before Conquest dropped, so that way we don't have to think about ladder infinite anymore. We can just focus on Conquest. But what is that going to look like next month when they literally start at the same time? Do we think people are going to spend that hour going up the ladder? And maybe they are because they want the card backs. Or are they going to spend that hour in Conquest? Because, a battle mode match is 40 minutes. Unless you got some crazy snaps going on, it's 30 to 40 minutes on a good battle mode match.
Yeah, I still personally think the season's going to start and people are going to test in ladder and then, try hard in Conquest, which means I think ladder is going to be flooded in the first week of the month. And then by the end of the month, it's going to die off tremendously because everyone's focused on trying to push those infinity conquests and get those. You have a limited window. Enjoy that part of the game mode. That's what I think is most likely going to happen. It's
Yeah.
either you get to infinite in the first week or you wait and then you get there in the last week, and almost nothing in between. But it does lead to an interesting point, which is when you're looking at Conquest and how it's going to drop and how it's going to reset, and everyone's now getting in on this base level. At the very beginning, we're all in the proving grounds, and there's going to be a ton of content from anybody and everybody and their sister talking about best strategies going into, Conquest mode. And we're looking at, okay, it's better for you to grind on these levels versus these levels. And we look at we talked about the card acquisition economy, and we look at the economy of what the game mode is going to bring with variants and how interested people are going to be when it comes to the rewards that you get or can refarm over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little concerned with the time investment of Conquest mode, so much so that I would not be surprised if come August, I'm not going to say June, I'm not going to say July,
Yeah.
but come August, they change Conquest mode to being an 8-point match instead of a 10-point match.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much it's tied to battle mode, and if they're able to modify that, right? Like, will it be its own thing? Will they change battle mode in general to be 8 instead of 10? I don't think they will, only because, and this is battle mode. I don't know about Conquest. Battle mode specifically, I think needs to be 10. It shouldn't be a one and done. But
I agree.
Maybe I could see that with Conquest. I think Conquest is going to be really interesting because we know there's the shop, right? And in the shop, there's things you can get from the medals that you win and all of that, right? So I think that that's cool where you can pick some stuff up. But I was actually saying this in the creator chat earlier, where realistically the big win in Conquest mode is taking down Infinite and getting the Infinite border on your avatar. But to our knowledge, that's the same reward every season. So if I do this once or twice, am I really going to try to get this on every single avatar that I only use one avatar anyway? Like, I think that that's going to be an interesting thing when you're talking about like 2-3 months down the line, outside of getting enough matches to get whatever I want in the shop, which can be done on any of the difficulties, right? Like, I can just get one win on gold and lose and still get medals. So it's going to be really interesting to see like how much investment happens, because there isn't the shiny card back like ladder that's different every month. So it's not anything against Conquest. I think the mode is cool. I'm just saying, like, I'm curious 3-4 months from now, what's the carrot at the end of the stick when it's just an infinite border? And if I've already done it once, do I care about doing it again?
Right. It's the replayability. It's in many ways, I like that they made Infinite for Conquest mode only the last week of the year. It makes a lot of sense. Last week of the month, which makes a lot of sense for both, the pool of people that are trying to participate and increasing timing, towards the end of the month for the game's perspective and numbers, like really smart.
Yeah.
But the long-term replayability versus ladders rewards is what I'm curious about, because I think we're going to learn a lot about this community in general over the next 4 weeks or so between patches, as we see our first reset with Conquest mode, as we see ladder do its proper reset. We're going to get a much better feeling for the general scope of the Marvel Snap community to say, this is how people have handled this. This is what people are actually interested or not interested in. Has it buzzed up the tournament scene? Is it just a mode that, okay, I got my one frame and there's no other reason to do it? Like, if there were daily objectives added or weekly objectives added or something, I could see that as like another further incentive for some of those other weeks. But I agree with you that the long-term replayability of the mode, outside of the shiny new toy syndrome that's going to come from its release, I'm keeping an eye on it because it's exciting. and could open up some new fun contests and competitions in the future.
Yeah.
But I'm a little leery right now on what it actually is going to do for the game.
Yeah.
Just as a whole, besides screen time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, right? It's screen time because now you're locked into 40-minute matches. So if you think about it, right, like to win infinite, you got to win 5 times. So 5 rounds of Swiss, right, which is what we do in the tournaments. We do 8. I mean, that's 4 hours pretty easily in the game. So, you know, and that's if you win every one of them. But like, that's a big commitment for a game that's made to be 5 minutes matches and leave type stuff, right? Battle mode was already kind of the first step of this, of like, all right, let me sit down against some friends, and it's done well for the tournament scene. And so I think that this really is the part where they wanted ladder to be. They wanted ladder to be like, you made infinite, you're one of the best of the best, all this kind of stuff. So I think that this infinite in Conquest is very similar in that you get this border, you can show it off. But again, there's nothing on that border that tells me if it's season 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. It's not the Spider-Verse infinite border like the Spider-Verse card back. So I think if they did something like that, it would make me grind every season for that infinite win, because I want the Spider-Verse infinite border. I want the Phoenix Force infinite border because it it makes my border look like it's on fire, right, from the Phoenix. Like, I think if you did that stuff, I would be excited to grind this.
Yeah.
But as soon as I get my first infinite border, unless I have like 2 avatars I really like, I don't think I'm going to take the time to do it again. Unless it's just like I find the deck that makes it easy. I don't know if I'm going to grind the infinite. I'll probably grind the gold or the silver or whatever, but maybe not. Maybe I will. We'll also have to see what the medals look like for 1 win over 2 wins somewhere else or whatever. But
so I'm going to throw this out here to you on the fly as an idea for maybe not I don't know if we'll do it this first month or maybe we'll do it the next month with Conquest Mode, but I'm throwing it out there. You remember N64's Mario Party 2, or just Mario Party in general? And there was that awesome mini game called Totem Pole Pound, which was literally you just had to grind that totem pole slowly down into the ground, jump, do the butt flip, butt stomp, and just slowly get it all the way down, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to turn Conquest Mode into some kind of Conquest Rush. Take the idea of Cube Rush and hybrid it with Conquest Mode. Everybody starts in the Proving Grounds all at the same time, and the goal is first one to beat infinite. So you get through the Proving Grounds. It's like the totem pole. You've moved down. Now you're on to silver, and then you have that constant race there of like, oh no, they lost on that second battle of gold. Now they got a farther distance. Like,
I think what this
really fun
was going to be. So I honestly thought when they announced this that it was going to be, once you beat Proving Grounds, you go to silver. You can't go down, but you have to win so many before you go to gold. And you have to win them in a row or whatever they want to do. Like, I thought that was how it was going to be. But the fact that, like, you can do Proving Grounds as many times as you want, get a whole bunch of silver tickets. You can go win silver. You can get to gold, right? Get your gold ticket, go to gold. But then if you lose that, now I have to go back to silver to get another gold ticket, unless I'm spending my gold. But I'll be interested to see how many people can win, because theoretically you could just spend gold right away and go into the gold bracket, right? And try to win an infinite ticket. But I'll be interested to see what this is going to look like, because the thing that people probably aren't thinking about is the fact that I win Proving Grounds, I go to silver. I win silver, I go to gold. I win gold, I get my infinite ticket, right? That's good for the last week. Now I have to go back down to Proving Grounds, or I've got to buy gold in the gold again. So it isn't just like I want to grind infinite tickets. I'm having to grind all 3 of these just to get an infinite ticket. So I honestly think you're barely going to have anybody outside of the grinders, outside of the streamers that are grinders that play this game 24/7, are going to have a bunch of infinite tickets. And then I think what we're going to see is a complaint from the community, shocker, complaint from the community, that this is how they're trying to get our gold, is everybody's spending gold to get infinite tickets, to be able to compete in infinite. And then again, not winning, but competing in infinite. So
right.
I don't know. I'm curious how well it will be received, even though everybody's excited about it. And I'm definitely going to be doing it tomorrow, whenever it drops with the patch. But like, I don't know. I'm concerned that it's going to be way more of a grind than anybody's thinking about.
Yeah. Well, yeah. A lot of people are starting to come around to the idea that this is going to be a ridiculous amount of grinding. And that's inevitable in some way, shape, or form because of how just the mode of battle mode is structured. But it is almost a counter to what the game was originally based on, which is quick little 5-minute battles. And now if you want the rewards, you're spending hours a week in this one mode in particular. And now, granted, there are some people who play hours a day on ladder and never hit infinite. And now you're going to throw on this other mode that takes away from that time. It doesn't add more time on for some people. It takes away from other parts in exchange as a consequence of it. So it's going to be a fine balance of watching in the first couple of months, because we all know, and we all need to come to this memory point, that this is not the ultimate final version of whatever this is. This is their first ladder has changed a billion different ways. Collection track has changed a billion different ways. Things are going to change, and we're going to, provide our feedback. And I invite the community to do that too. I invite you to give your feedback about Conquest Mode, specifically in a constructive manner. That's the biggest thing I can emphasize. Constructive feedback, not this sucks, uninstalling. No, not that kind of crap. Like, be a part of what helps. And I know some people try to push against the idea of, well, you shouldn't figure out the solutions because that's ridiculous that you would contribute that voluntarily. Well, the reason I'm thinking about it is because I'm looking at the long-term health of the game. Do I think devs take our suggestions seriously and make that, well, so-and-so said, let's do that? No, but they do listen to us, and they listen to what our interests are as solutions, and then find ways to maybe make it potentially work. So I think that's the big part that we can all be a part of. And we've talked about it at length here in this podcast in other ways over the last several, dozens of episodes now. Be a part of what helps. Have constructive conversations, because Conquest is something exciting. We should all be excited about it. I know I am. I know there's a lot that's going to be happening over the next couple of days. And, people are going to be bringing in Silk into tournaments starting this week. And then we've got Spider-Ham, June Open, Chaos. Like, it's just... You want to talk real quick about the June Open that we can now finally talk about for Snap.fan?
Absolutely. So going from Conquest to talking about battle mode to going into tournaments, we got the June Open. If you guys don't know what that is, and you're listening along and things like that, Snap.fan has a monthly open. So we have a monthly tournament that happens, and this is like month 4, I believe, going into it, maybe month 3. I think it's month 4.
Well, do we want to recognize the very first month? I think that's a part of it.
I mean, I think so. I mean, it had its hiccups, but it was this very first thing, and it was our dipping our toes and our feet and jumping into the deep end as it came to tournament hosting. Had some hiccups through it, but it still had a finish, and it still had a winner, which was very important. And every month we've gotten better at it, but yeah, we've got the June Open. What that is 8 rounds of Swiss. So if you guys have never competed in tournaments or things like that, or you're interested in it, it's free. It's completely free. You can join up. And what happens is it's all day. We'll get into the dates and everything in just a second, but it's all day. You start at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and essentially we have 8 rounds of Swish, which means no matter what, you get to play 8 rounds. Stick around, play, you play 8 rounds, and whoever has the top scores at the end of those 8 rounds, those top 8 get split into another bracket. Then we play top 8, and the winner wins all kinds of stuff and prizes. Top 8 wins value and money and stuff. So that's how the tournament works. I'll throw it over to Guest as he can kind of go through pricing, dates, and all of that. But it's a ton of fun. It lasts, so make sure you mark your calendar because it does last like 8 or 9 hours if you make it all the way to the end. We have awesome broadcasters and all that. So I'll come back to the broadcast itself. But Guest, if you want to kind of fill them in on dates, prizes, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah, I sent you the Twitter link so we can put that up over for the conversation while we're here, but it is available on Twitter with all the links there if you wish to go on in and register yourself over at communitygaming.io for the Snap.fan June Open. It will be on Saturday, June 24th. And the pre-show for when we broadcast starts at 11 a.m. Eastern, but the actual tournament starts itself at noon Eastern Standard Time. It will go all the way through, as it did last time, to or somewhere around the 8 to 9 o'clock hour when all is said and done. We have a $600 prize pool once again. That's a lot of money to give out. You know, the top 8, I believe they're going to be getting the premium pack also for the Snap.fan website as well, which we are completely redoing because Snap.fan is going through a huge rework internally and visually externally. We're doing a lot right now to the site. I'm very proud to say all of the work that we've all been starting to pour in it on the back end, organizing and building not just a better tournament scene, but a better experience for you, the user, including having things publicly available that are otherwise locked behind paywalls on every other site. So I'm very happy to say that we're going to be really kicking off pretty aggressively with the new Snap.fan, and part of that has to do with the Snap.fan June Open. Again, that's on the 24th. That is Saturday. The actual competition itself starts at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know I'll be there. I know you'll be there. Mm-hmm. And we hope to see all of you there at the same time. So, Default Dan, where can we find you?
Absolutely. So it's one of those things where if you want to check out the tournament and all that good stuff, Snap.fan, so twitch.tv/snap.fan, all spelt out, so DOT. We'll be there, like you mentioned, starting at 11 o'clock. We'll have players meetings, all of that stuff, getting you, make sure you checked in, all of that, with 12 o'clock kicking it off. We'll have multiple casters throughout the day, you know, commentating on the different rounds. So again, you come hang out with us and chat, talk to us. We are live. We have the gameplay that is delayed, but we are live with the chat, and the casters are watching it real time with you guys. So technically real time. The thing is 3 minutes delayed, but what they're seeing is exactly what you're seeing. It's awesome. That way we don't have any kind of awkwardness. You say something and they don't see it for 3 minutes. That doesn't happen here. So it's awesome. It's a great time. We've enjoyed it every month. Like I said, we get better at it every month. $600 prize pool, just like Guest said. And it's awesome. So I'm sure Guest is going to put some links down everywhere, wherever you're listening, on where you can sign up and check it out. But if you need to, go over to snap.fan, the website, you'll see the article and all that good stuff, and you'll be able to sign up there as well, over on Community Gaming. So yeah, super excited about it. I love the tournament scene. Snap is continuing to grow in the tournament scene, and can't wait to see what kind of fun decks we may get at the different tournaments, because we had some crazy decks this past weekend, and hopefully we're going to be talking about that on Friday's podcast. So definitely make sure you tune in to that one as well. And speaking of decks, let me pop over to this one, this spicy one, for the deck of the week. Guest, I think it's technically your deck today, or am I Mondays? I don't remember anymore.
You're technically Mondays, yes.
Okay.
So it is your deck. It is your creation and showcase. We have it up on the article right now on Snap.fan as a suggested deck to start messing around a little bit with Silk.
Yeah.
So you gave us a card by card breakdown on the deck on the website.
Yeah.
Just give us a quick little, hey, here's what this is, deck and rundown.
Yeah, just a high level of the deck so you guys can kind of see it and experience this deck. Again, I'm not saying this is tier 1 yet because I can't play with it for another 30 minutes, but we're going to test it out tonight. But this is kind of my take on Silk. So if you're listening on the podcast, definitely go check out the article. I go card by card with it. But if we're looking at the deck, it starts with Kitty Pryde, Bast, Human Torch, Iron Fist. So again, got some interesting cards in there. We got Angela, Dagger, Craven, Ghost Spider. We got Silk, Vulture, Beast, and America Chavez. So it's really interesting. And what I'm doing with the deck, we're doing a move style deck because we have Silk going to be bouncing around the whole board. We've got Craven who's going to be trying to take advantage of that. So putting things in Craven's lane, moving them around, using Kitty Pryde specifically because you're going to be able to put her in Silk's lane, make Silk move. She'll come back to your hand and you can continue to get her to move around throughout there. You got Bass just to kind of help out with a bunch of cards. And yeah, it's one of those kind of bounce / movement, but it's doing it different than what we've seen in some of the other decks. And I'm excited to try it out. So we'll see. If I can get a giant Craven, a giant Dagger, or, you know, Human Torch or something, it's going to be pretty awesome. And again, this was my first stab. So there may be some cards that we have to tweak and do. But I'm hoping, you know, with the couple cards we have for movement, I've got Beast to pick them back up and try it again and boost up people even more, even after the nerf that we got to Beast. So
yeah, I like he's titled the deck Craven to Movement. And the only thing I keep looking at as the piece to it, because it is a move bounce deck. And I understand the America Chavez play just to make life a little bit easier and refine those pulls. I'm just such a huge fan of Cloak in these styles of decks. And I keep looking at them and I'm going, man, there's got to be a way to get like a Sarah Cloak thing going on as like your 2 outs. And I mean, that's probably like the direction I'm going to go, just like as I tweak it a little bit outside of just literally plopping Silk into my current Shuri deck. But I think this is a really, really fun combo play. And I'm going to be watching it in particular to see how high does this actually scale. Because if you look at it, you've got Kitty Pryde, Human Torch, Dagger, Craven, and Vulture, all as scalable cards through different mechanics.
Angela, you still got Angela who can scale,
and Angela, you missed, that can scale also.
Craven,
move wise, but like it's true. I said him, but like there's a lot of different cards that can scale in different ways. And I mean, Craven's going to benefit this month because everybody and their sister is experimenting or playing move right now in some way, but maybe not next month. So let's enjoy this one while we can. Because Craven always benefits if the other side moves. And this is all about your side moving.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, I had Cloak kind of in and out of the deck. I think Bast was one of my last additions. I like Bast because of a turn 1, hitting Kitty Pryde, Human Torch, Angela, and the others are going to get residuals, right? Like 1 power or something like that. But hitting those with a Bast already puts them way ahead of what they would normally be at. So if I was playing around and I was going more into Human Torch or Vulture, then maybe Cloak coming in here and maybe replacing Bast is an option. You know, again, Bast plus the Silk is going to be your worst play, but yeah, it looks fun. I'm hoping it works out, and like you said, the Chavez is there just to kind of give you another card you're not going to draw, so you're making sure you're drawing the cards you want. But it could very well be Chavez is just not needed, and you already have every card in here that you want to draw. So maybe adding Cloak there, or adding, you know, a Sarah or something there may actually just be the better choice within that. I know another card that's not in here is like Falcon when you're looking at the bounces, but I really wasn't sure if I cared too much about them because I only have 4 1-drops. If I had 6 1-drops or 5 1-drops, maybe, but yeah, I don't know. I think
cool, it's a really, really fun deck.
Yeah.
So
it looks,
I'm excited to try it.
It looks different. I wanted to try something different. After playing Hella this whole season with Living Tribunal, I just want to keep it on the different train right now. So.
Yeah. You're definitely in the opposite train away from Living Tribunal when you're sitting here with Kitty, Pride, and Silk. So
who knows? Maybe Living Tribunal is my 6-drop. Just to stick them in at the top end if they scale high enough.
I have it. I called it as a wild card that Living Tribunal is going to have a place and move in some way, shape, or form as a surprise like tournament play. But we'll figure it out. We're gonna test it. I'll be testing mine on Wednesday, like I said, on stream. I'll be doing morning streams this week on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then I'll be doing a night stream on Thursday. And I mean, Wednesday night, you and I are going to be broadcasting together for Wednesday Night Snap over on the Snap.fan channel. Well, there's a lot coming in, good sir. So if it's all right with you, I think our audience is exhausted in Silk, and we should let everybody absorb the chaos of Conquest. So, Default Dan, say goodnight to our lovely friends.
All right, guys, you take it easy and come back to us on Friday when we're talking all tournament stuff.
This is true because this is the Snapback Podcast, where you snap and we snap back. See what I did there? I actually took the outro and did it beforehand. That way you didn't forget about it again this time. Okay? I did the outro. Now the music's playing.
Gotcha.
But I gave you your chance so you wouldn't forget and didn't shut me out because you want to go do Marvel Scrap early.
Yeah. I know we gotta work through that, but we'll make it happen. I'll be good.
Thanks. I appreciate it.